Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's go to Spain. Spain's Prime Minister has directly targeted Washington over the cost of the conflict. That's right, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez. He has reignited a massive global debate by highlighting the staggering difference between military spending and humanitarian aid linked to the Iran conflict. Mr. Pedro, he pointed to figures showing the United States spent tens of billions of dollars on military operations, while humanitarian assistance remained shockingly small in comparison to that. According to the numbers cited, the ratio, it heavily favored war spending over relief effort for the civilians who were affected by the crisis. And this particular message, it is resonating because many ordinary people across the globe, they are kind of exhausted by endless conflict. They see government spending billions on bombs, billions on missiles, in fact military deployment, while inflation rise, healthcare systems struggle and living costs continue climbing. Mr. Pedro, he essentially asked a brutal question: has the modern world become more willing to fund destruction than human survival? What makes this politically explosive is that the criticism is not coming from Russia, China, or Iran. It is coming from within the Western alliance itself. That signals growing fracture inside Europe over America's global military strategy. Here, several European populations have become increasingly skeptical of prolonged military involvement abroad, specifically after years of economic hardship and political instability at home. This also reflects a wider ideological shift that is happening globally. Governments are facing pressure to prioritize domestic economic struggle over international conflict. Food prices, housing costs, healthcare access, and unemployment are becoming more and more politically sensitive than foreign intervention. Leaders who fail to address those concerns, they are increasingly facing public backlash now. And that particular frustration over affordability is not limited to Europe. It is now becoming a major political issue in the United States too, particularly in cities like New York, which is why one controversial new proposal is now attracting national attention. Europe is deeply nervous tonight because reports suggest that Mr. Donald Trump's administration is preparing to reduce the military capability the United States would commit to NATO during a major conflict. If then for decades, Europe relied heavily on everything that America had. American power of security, American fighter jet, American missile system, American troops, and America's nuclear umbrella formed the backbone of NATO's deterrence strategy. But now, European capitals fear that umbrella may not be as guaranteed as it was once. According to reports, the Pentagon may scale down key wartime commitments under the NATO force model. Troop production in Germany, they are already under discussion, and military rotation to parts of Eastern Europe could reportedly face cuts. This is also sending anxiety across countries like Poland and the Baltic states, which see Russia as a direct long-term threat for them. Now, for them, America's military presence, it's not symbolic, it is existential. And how can we ignore the timing? The timing could hardly be worse. Mr. Vladimir Putin and Mr. Xi Jinping, they are openly strengthening ties while Russia continues challenging the West strategically and militarily. In the meantime, Europe is already facing economic pressure, energy uncertainty, and political division. Now, many fear America itself may be becoming less willing to carry the burden of defending Europe anymore. Mr. Trump supporters, they argue that NATO allies have depended too heavily on Washington for too long. They say European nations must spend more on their own defense instead of relying on the American taxpayers. That argument, it resonates with many Americans who are frustrated by foreign wars and rising domestic economic problems. But critics warn that weakening NATO unity, it could embolden adversaries like Russia and create instability across Europe. Ladies and gentlemen, the bigger picture here, it is becoming impossible to ignore. America is increasingly debating whether it still wants to be world's policeman or not. And that debate, it could reshape global power balance for decades. But even as Washington debates future wars, A new report is now revealing how costly recent confrontation may already have been for the United States.